Risk. You take your chances every day just getting out of bed in the morning. But in our business, risk means something a little less philosophical and a little more grounded. HRP's work in the areas of risk management planning, hazard assessment, process safety management, and related services help our clients understand what risk really means to them. On today's Work Hard segment of 312, we're going to be hearing from our experts in the area. Then kick back with us for a Friday Play Hard segment. It's all coming up next on 312.
Hey, I'm Jacob Smith, a senior project manager out of the Greenville, South Carolina office for HRP.
Hey, I am Justin Evans. I am a senior consultant with HRP and I work for Jake.
Hi, this is Jesse Zahn with HRP Associates. I'm a regional office manager in the New York State office.
And I'm Jason Davis. I'm a senior project manager with HRP Associates out of the Greenville, South Carolina office.
Okay, so we recently saw the news about the, Jake, I believe it was a poultry plant in Georgia.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that it kind of inspired us to maybe talk about some of the processes that HRP does that overlap in that field. And I'm wondering if you can start us off by kind of running through the importance of hazard assessment and recognition.
Yeah, so, coming from an EHS background, it's something that, when we visit facilities, it's easy to be comfortable with what you work around. So maybe you don't have these big stringent requirements that apply to your site, but there's things you probably walk past every day that, could lead to catastrophic events that we don't really think about. So that was kind of the intent of maybe talking about some of that stuff and how we as EHS professionals, we work around that. We bring, sight to those things and kind of help clients through that process. And see, my issue with this event, I don't know anything about it. I don't know why it happened. I don't know what the failure was. I don't know if there were employees where they weren't supposed to be, what the root cause and all that. So it's kind of hard to bring a firm understanding of how it could be prevented. We've investigated injuries and stuff like this that have resulted in casualty. And it's until you have all the facts, it's really hard to say what part of it or what component of it went wrong. You're right. So us as EHS professionals, I think it's more about why is it important to do hazard assessments and kind of what are some of those tools we can use, even if it's not an RMP site or a PSM facility.
No, so I think that's a good point, Jacob, that, a lot of times facilities clearly think they're in the program and they're trying to keep up with all the demands on them. Their environmental health and safety teams, their engineers, their maintenance folks. But this discussion we're having today about this Georgia plant with a liquid nitrogen release, the elements, right, the safety program, the risk management program, the PSM program, those elements can be applied to several processes at a plant to help reduce their risk, assess their liabilities, protect the workers, protect the public. So I think that's a great example, as you were saying, of really expanding this program to use the tools, the elements of the program, the training, the process safety review, all those aspects, the auditing to help really up a facility's game.
And I think something we found is that, if you're a facility that doesn't fall under PSM or RMP, or maybe it's a misconception that you don't, there's not a lot of good assessment tools out there outside of like job hazard assessment and job safety assessment, where you're more focused on the interaction of the worker with the equipment, more so than the equipment design, the equipment process, and all those other elements that can come into play, like mechanical integrity and all those checks and things that happen on a routine basis to keep a process maintained,
And I think that's kind of the beauty of where the opportunity is for us, because we've got experience dealing with these PSM and RMP covered processes. And even for some of these chemicals we may be dealing with regularly at these plants that aren't part of a covered process or not a covered chemical, I still think that some of the stuff that we do for these clients would translate over. So we take elements of that RMP program and we apply it to something that isn't maybe inherently hazardous, but is still a good practice to go through and may help identify a weakness or something that's not being done to the level that it should be done.
Yeah, and I think a neat perspective is when you look at, Tom, when you look at, Jake and Justin, and myself, you're really looking at a neat representation of HRP. Me being an office manager, been associated with these sorts of assessments for a long time, worked with various engineers, Justin is the boots on the ground, seen a lot of different processes, interacted with these people on the floor, listened to concerns brought up on other chemical handling, other plant stories, and bringing to bear our experience, through Jacob's experience, myself, and the different engineers we've worked with throughout the company. Chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, safety professionals, bringing all that to bear and trying to technically sometimes that's the easiest part to assess. And then, I think the tougher part in a plant setting is, the culture, the safety culture. So taking that know-how, that technical know-how, the regulatory requirements, whether they're in a program or outside a program, and saying, how are we going to affect culture? Because, we're here for a reason. There's been a failure. There's been a near miss. How are we going to get the plant floor folks to, really take those observations and roll them up through the system, up to the safety coordinators, up to the department managers, reach out to us and facilitate change. We do a lot of compliance systems at HRP. We do a lot of the environmental, we do the safety, we do engineering. And, time after time, we see a lot of failures and that messaging, that strategy being implemented, year to year, regardless of the changes in regs, just, keeping that system going forward, trying to stay compliant, keep that 100% all the time. So, this is a neat representation, as I said, with the different cross-section of HRP. So hopefully that helps explain some of the things we look at. And I think, Justin hit it very well. Looking at other processes that might not apply, or there might be a change in chemical or in storage, and all of a sudden they're in the program, or maybe there's a change on the homeland security aspect that brings in a different set of regulations. So there's a lot of stuff that can apply, and that window can open and close, throughout the year, throughout a change in production, a new manufacturing process. Ramping up, maybe there's something even COVID related where they're asked to supply a new chemical or a new intermediate or some new packaging material that might have some listing in OSHA that makes it more hazardous. So all good points.
Yeah, and Jesse, that's great info, and I think that really drives home the importance of having a good hazard assessment recognition process. Is you can assign a likelihood and a severity to anything, whether it's COVID, whether it's ammonia, whether it's one of the covered chemicals under PSM or anything else. You can really use those same tools across the board. And I think that's something that we bring to the table when we approach these projects, is not reinventing the wheel, but really looking at what are the things that we have that work, what are the things that the industry relies on for these kinds of assessments, and then applying them to other situations,
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. We're going in for practical solutions, assessing the situation and providing, a good standard of care. And, the standard of care in these situations can vary. It can be a tricky gray area. And it's not to say that on the risk end, especially with, flammables and combustion and explosive events and those sorts of things, we have the expertise, we have the network to help with those aspects as well. Flammables, combustible dust, those are challenging topics to address. They're very cost intensive, they're design intensive, because they have serious safety repercussions. So I think Jake makes a great point about having practical solutions using the tools at hand. But when we need to go into the deep end of the pool and look at LOPA, these other sophisticated techniques, some modeling, we're able to dip into that and provide a good engineering assessment and a good movement forward. Excellent point.
So I'm thinking about when any of you have been in those facilities or working with those clients, can you think of any instances where our prescribed processes, or I guess our safety intervention, you might call it, prevented or caught something that could have been potentially life-threatening or disastrous for the client, and obviously keeping the details of the client confidential, but any instances that you can recall where that was the case?
So Tom, not speaking specific to any project, but in the scenarios that I've been in, really our job is to identify, the scenarios with a process or a system or a plant that have an unacceptable level of risk, right? So we're constantly looking at the likelihood and the severity of these incidents. And our job as team leads with these assessments is to figure out what those are, and then drive the team to come up with solutions to drive down the likelihood of an event from happening. So absent of replacement, you're always going to have some level of risk associated with a process. So our job is to look at ways to drive down the likelihood of those severity incidents happening, and working with the facility on what things are feasible, and things that can come into play. So as far as specific to a process, it's not common to have several recommendations to come out of those studies for more advanced study techniques, and then also for areas where we know we can make improvements and things with the teams.
That's a good question, Tom, and I think Jake touched on a couple good aspects of it. In my experience, we do interact with clients, so there's a couple of things out there that can affect clients. Sometimes they're purchased by larger companies that have more, to be honest, more financial resources to help them build their program, or really bring their program up to speed. So typically oftentimes during a merger and acquisition, a company's EHS policy that they just acquired is looked at very carefully, and oftentimes gaps are identified, and they haven't, the smaller company hasn't had the benefit of having, consultants on board to look at some of these specialized areas. So I've been involved in some of those instances where, we visited those new clients to HRP and found, identified in some flammable environments, some flammable vapors that, there are some areas that weren't considered. They didn't have the expertise, or the person was, really wearing 3 or 4 hats at the facility and didn't have time to really chase some of these scenarios down, understand the process, and they just had too much to do. In addition, sometimes not having a technical background. So, we've identified areas where flammables have, gone into environments, potentially, migrate to environments that aren't, intrinsically safe, meeting, electrical code. So, we certainly aren't aware of any, explosive issues, or, near miss, not near misses, but explosive issues, people getting hurt. But, I'd like to think that along the way we've prevented some issues, addressed some risk, helped define it, worked with the facility as a partner to get them where they need to be. And so there is an opportunity, I guess, to answer your question, there is an opportunity to find some issues and really hopefully prevent, health ramifications. Those could be, death scenarios, amputations, burns, things like that. So they're still out there, and we're still engaged in helping folks with those.
Okay, and you'll have to bear with me in case I'm not quite getting it initially. But so would you say then that kind of what we're looking at are ever-present risks, and what we do is find ways to reduce the likelihood of those risks being realized?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you could break any task down to 2 parameters, likelihood and severity. So how frequent is it going to happen, or could potentially happen, and how severe is it when it does happen? So our job as EHS professionals is to identify when those are at a level that's unacceptable, to where we're looking at things like significant injuries, incidents, plant destruction, those kinds of things, and really drive that likelihood down to where it's an acceptable level, to continue processing. And most of the time we're finding that the solutions, they lie at the plant. So the plant knows how to fix the problems, but it's a matter of getting the team together and getting them to strategize on it and brainstorm and to find real world solutions that are feasible for their plant. So, that's where it's important to understand the process of hazard assessment and know that we're not bringing all of the answers in every scenario, but what we're doing is bringing the leadership to the assessment process to make sure that we're driving that information out of the site, because they know their process better than anybody, Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to bring all those elements in, and where we need to, we do bring the expertise into the process. It's just a matter of, what resources does the plant have? What resources does the plant need? It's kind of what it comes down to.
Gotcha. And the team refers to the staff of the client and the plant. Is that correct? Or
correct. So when you approach hazard assessment, it's to make sure that you have the right people in the room to discuss. So it's representation from different departments. Maybe it's engineering, maybe it's maintenance, maybe it's facilities. Really depends on what the process is that you're looking at, but it's important to have a structure to it so that you're ensuring the right people are in the room, because they have experience in this. A lot of them have been doing these, working on these systems for 20, 30 years, and they've seen the human interaction side of it and the things that can go wrong. If you're using the equipment improperly, if the equipment's not maintained, if it's not set up correctly, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think team is a great question, Tom. So these can be sophisticated, they can be complex, they can be simple systems, and I think in our experience, I think one of the attributes of our approach to this process is obviously we're working with the local facility folks, their corporate resources, and our experience in different plants and different processes across the company. And I think when we look at team, as we move through these projects, we work with other facilities with that client, other clients that might have a similar process. Maybe it's a packaging process, a chemical process, some sort of reactor that's making a certain product. So one of the things we bring is the lessons learned, improvements, response to audits, other things that we can bring back to that client and that team, and really maximize our impact on that facility. So I think team and collaboration is a very important aspect with HRP and the way we approach projects. We're always trying to bring the best to our clients. So I think that's a great question, defining what team is at the plant level and at the HRP level.
Now, is it ever the case that we would be at a plant with a client and they don't have the necessary people there, or maybe it's not the kind of the right people, as we had mentioned earlier? Is that a situation we ever run into?
Yeah, so I can speak to that, Tom. It's something that happens more often than you think it would, especially for a new system or a system where maybe you've got a change in leadership or things at the plant where you don't have those resources, those 20, 30-year employees. And what we find is sometimes it's necessary to go back to the equipment manufacturers and the equipment suppliers and things and the information and knowledge that they can bring to the process. And, whether it's a chemical supplier, whether it's the tank manufacturer, whether it's the oven manufacturer, they're always involved in the process, whether it's making sure that we have all the process safety information we need from them to have a thorough study, or whether it's having them on the phone during the assessment process or actually in the room with us talking through, the equipment that they've manufactured.
I will say that due to the nature of how we get a lot of our work, because it's word of mouth type stuff, I do think that we've had a certain level of success in bringing kind of a breadth of knowledge to certain industries. Like we do a lot of work with polyurethane foam. And while people are using polyurethane foam in very different ways, they're still getting it from A to B to C and into their product the same way. So I think we've been able to approach some new clients with stuff we've seen at other processes and other clients, and sort of head off some of these hazards before they occur, or at least put in some sort of safeguard against it before that event will actually happen at that plant.
The resources at hand, when Jake talks, your question on, is everything there that, that we need to do a comprehensive, kind of minimum requirements assessment. So one of the things we've also been seeing, and this is, outside, includes the RMP PSM program, the hazard assessment, is, generally in industry right now, I think we're going through a period these last 5 or 7 years of what I would call a brain drain. There's a lot of folks retiring, these environmental regulations were in the 70s and 80s, and you're seeing a lot of loss of brain power. So knowledge of the process, knowledge of the system. So there's more loss of that facility knowledge, drawings are lost, updates aren't kept, budgets are tight. So I would say it's more important than ever that there's going to be more gaps, and it's important to identify those gaps. And I know Jake and Justin have a lot of hands-on experience with helping with process and instrumentation diagrams, helping with controls evaluation, helping even with assessments of inventories of that hazardous material, the hazardous substance in their system. So there's, even though it's a mature program, it's an older program. I think it's got these competitive draws on it, with the change in the labor force. So there's opportunity for improvement, and I think HRP fills that gap well when there is a loss of plant resources, knowledge, basic things as manuals and inventories and things like that. So I think that's another great point you brought up.
Yeah, Jesse, and I think that drives home the preparation, and that's something that HRP always puts a lot of focus in, is preparing for the actual hazard assessment process. So weeks in advance, typically, if time allows, we're already looking to make sure that we've got the right amount of process safety information to be able to have an efficient study. And if we don't, we're going to chase down those resources and make sure we get the data we need.
So maybe we can kind of go around and each say something regarding the real cost of an accident or injury.
It's as far as actually putting a dollar value to injury or accident. I'm not. That's from one end of the spectrum to the other. But there's so many factors that play into that overall cost. Number one, if you're talking about a health and safety incident, there's a direct cost associated with not only the OSHA fines and penalties that might be assessed, but there's an impact to insurance premiums. There's an impact due to implementation of additional health and safety programs and/or trainings. And that dollar figure just keeps expanding the bigger a facility that you're talking about, because you can't just focus a large portion of that training on a subset of employees. It's typically you wind up rolling it out to everybody within the facility. And then, there's long-term costs there, medical. I didn't even get into medical, but, a company can be potentially on the hook for medical costs incurred due to an accident or God forbid, a fatality. The prevention aspect is so much more cost effective than dealing with it after the fact.
Yeah, Jason, and I think you bring up some very valuable information between, the direct and indirect costs. And a lot of times when we're doing safety presentations and things to facilities, just to bring up the importance of this, we use the iceberg analogy where you're talking about, you can see the top of the iceberg. It looks like this small little thing. That's something that's manageable. We'll deal with it when it comes, but you have no idea what's underneath the surface of the water. And those are those indirect costs that you talk about. And I think public perception is a huge one right now, especially with, how present things are, whether it be social media, whether it be news and everything else. If you have an incident, it's one thing if you, ruin some product or some things at the plant level. Obviously, it's a cost and your costs and everything else. But if you have something that makes the news and it gets out, about employee injury and everything else, there's no way to even evaluate what that cost would look like with loss of business, with, employee morale, with all those things that come along with perception, So that's something that we put a lot of focus in lately is always just, where are we in the world and kind of our value,
I was going to say exactly what Jake just said.
Sorry,
I think it's kind of tough to quantify some of the indirect costs that will eventually come out from this, but you can't almost put a price on it, because once your name gets out there for having had a health and safety incident, God forbid, a fatality, the name of that company is forever changed. Mm-hmm. And that's something that you can't take back. So that could affect the company moving forward until its eventual dissolution.
Right. I mean, so you're touching on, obviously the medical, the legal, and the brand, the tarnishing of the brand, which, is going to have, an impact on, stockholders, public perception, just stuff, all stuff we want to avoid at any cost.
So I think to wrap us up, I usually what I do is I ask people to, if they could give one piece of advice to the client relevant to what we've discussed so far, what would you tell them?
I think there's a lot of value in trying to implement an environmental health and safety management system. You can, there's a lot of facilities that take on ISO 14001 or 18001. One is environmental, one is health and safety. Those are environmental management systems. A lot of those are driven by customer demands. But any facility can implement some sort of environmental management system. And there's usually, I wouldn't call it an audit, but maybe an assessment of the programs you have in place. And you do it on a periodic basis, because if you treat those programs as a one and done, you can put it on the shelf and now you're good with it. Well, especially in manufacturing, things change, if not on an annual basis, on a monthly basis. And you need to constantly, we're getting back into hazard assessment, right? Do a hazard assessment for your facility, your operations, and change the way you train and educate your personnel based on those assessments. And it never ends. It's something that you always have to take a look at.
If there's a question, there's something you're new to a facility or you've been there a while and you just have a question on something that's come out, I think one of the best things you can do is reach out, whether it's reaching out to your management team or reaching out to HRP or other qualified consultants. I think, we have a really good reputation. We like to work with folks. We're always willing to help you through processes. So I think always look for more information, reach out for, assistance, for resources. Don't make assumptions. Don't hope the problems or, gaps go away. So my message is, look for those resources, reach out and, try to address the issue at hand.
Just understanding the importance of a thorough hazard assessment process and knowing what resources you have to have a good program in place. It's easy to get complacent in your system and your equipment and everything else. We all do it with things in our personal lives and everything else. And walking by something every day, maybe you haven't seen that side of it. But it's really just important to understand that there's always going to be risk associated with it. And it's always about mitigating risk as much as possible so that you can avoid these catastrophic type events.
I think that a lot of times when you're doing hazard assessment stuff, people will roll their eyes and there's sort of a stigma associated with it that it's boring or that it's not worthwhile or that we're just poking holes in something that isn't inherently flawed. We're just trying to make it fail. But for anyone who's actually been through a process incident that involved an injury or a fatality, like just the personal negative consequences you feel after that is enough to never want that to happen again. So in order to be able to catch this on the front end, I believe is where we bring the value added, because we've all seen a process accident in one way or another. And if I never see one again, it'll be too soon.
Tom Simmons. I'm here with Joe Cardinale and
Hi, everybody.
Everett Anderson.
Hey, folks.
Usual suspects. What are you guys drinking?
I am down to my last 3 Treehouse beers, and they're all the same, the Outlier.
I ran to my treehouse a little while ago, so I picked up some Fat Orange Cat, and I am drinking Traffic Lights Turn Blue Tomorrow. And everything I just said is incomprehensible to someone who isn't immersed in the craft beer world.
Oh my God, yeah. I actually don't even. I don't
just
even know
made
what
all
this
that
is.
up.
Yeah.
I am drinking it's called In-House IPA number 10. It's kind of the rotating IPA series from this place called Great Heights, which is my favorite brewery in Houston. It is a single IPA with hazy IPA, with Galaxy, Motica, and Sabro.
Nice.
So it's a
No
good.
Citra?
You could have made
Good
that
mix.
up. I don't even know what that is.
No Citra, but it's really good.
So let's go now to a weather update with Weatherman Anderson in the greater Houston area.
I have a different nickname every episode I'm on, I think.
Hey, that might be the thing.
How are we looking down there? So for the folks at home, Everett works in Houston area and has been going through the current frozen hell that is Texas right now. Everett, what can you tell our listeners?
Well, so far the last couple of days have been good. We've had power pretty much since it's really hard to keep track of time the last couple of days, but definitely the last 24 hours we probably had power. And yeah, it was just the early this week was just brutal. Lost power, couldn't heat our house.
It was Monday, right? It was
Monday. Monday was the storm, and then there was another storm on Tuesday night, and then there was a hard freeze every night after that. I don't know. It's just been crazy. We lost power on Monday. Didn't get it for 36 hours. House got down to 37 degrees.
Oof.
It was horrible. We have a fish that actually survived because
Hey!
my wife covered it in blankets and actually kept the heat in the fish tank, so that
insulated it a little bit. That's nice.
Yeah. But yeah, we probably got 2-3 inches of snow, and then it was just ice for the remainder, and then it would rain, and then it would freeze overnight. So then it's just a disaster down here because nothing is made for it. I mean,
No.
the houses aren't made for it, the plumbing's not made for it, the streets aren't made for it. There's no plows, there's no salt, there's no sand. It's just nothing. Like, you just have to sit there and wait. And then on top of that, you know, Texas has an independent power grid, so we couldn't borrow energy from the national grid. And then they had to start doing rolling blackouts. So basically, you get power for, like, on average, probably 2 hours, 2 hours on, 4 hours off.
Oh.
And when it started, you know, it was kind of like, oh, I don't know when we're gonna lose power, kind of thing. But you kind of time it a little bit, and then randomly, instead of 2 hours, it'd be like an hour and 10 minutes, and you thought you had, you know, 50 minutes left, and you're like, no, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and we'd get like power back, and I'd be like, quick, put something in the oven, you know what I mean? You had to, you know, have enough time to heat your house back up, just because at night it just got so cold, and you had to basically, I mean, we ran water like every day in all of our faucets to make sure they didn't freeze. I have no idea what my bill is going to be. This is going to be insane.
I was seeing about there was a local Domino's pizza, and they had like a weekend's worth of food that it was gone in 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that was like the only thing people could get.
Yeah, I think the lines for like Burger King, McDonald's, and Starbucks, like the next day, like 1.5, 2 hour lines to get it.
Dan was telling me like he saw some news article that Texas doesn't have any snowplows, but
No.
Alabama does, and there is a road, I think it's Route 84, and the Alabama side is plowed, but the Texas side is just all snow.
I think some of the northern city, I think Dallas, and has some stuff just because they're more northern. They get more snow more often than we do. Austin might have some stuff too. I'm not sure, because I know, you know, talking to people that live here, like they were like, you know, prior times, like if we're getting a freeze and no one else is, like they'll send some help from other places, but it was the whole state, so they couldn't do anything.
Jeez. Now, coming from New England, do you find it kind of funny how people are dealing with the cold weather compared to here, where we live that pretty much for like 3 months straight?
Yeah, it's hard though, because it's just different. Like it's so, you know, it's like if in the middle of the summer in Connecticut, all of a sudden it was 115 degrees, and you were like, what is going on? You know what I mean? Like it would just be shocking. Like you'd be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, is my dog gonna survive? Like it was like, it was just a weird thing for them. And it's, you know, and on top of that, it, like we said, like it just like there's no infrastructure for it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw pictures in the news and stuff, like people dressed up warm, and you got one guy just wearing a hoodie with flip-flops. That's his warm weather or his cold weather attire. I'm like, gee.
Yeah, I didn't throw away my winter weather gear because
there you go.
I'm smarter than
there
that.
You go.
I mean, yeah, on Tuesday night when it was 30 something degrees when I went to sleep, I was wearing like sweatpants, socks, long sleeves, sweatshirt, winter hat. Like it, like to go to bed.
Nice.
Like I felt like I was
fireplace?
Like camping in my house. Yeah, we do. We have a gas fireplace, which luckily has there's something like underneath it where you can basically, instead of use the electricity for the starter, you can use D batteries.
Oh,
so we were able to put those in. We had, for some reason,
yeah, I was gonna say,
for some
D
reason
batteries?
We had 2 D batteries. What it takes, I was like, what are the odds of this?
No kidding.
So we could at least have that
going.
going. I mean, without that, our house would have probably been like 20 degrees. Like it was crazy.
So kind of the theme of this episode is risk. We talked about what risk means to our clients and the services that we offer to help them mitigate that risk and understand it. That was the work hard section of the podcast. So in the play hard section, I'm wondering for each of you, what is the biggest risk that you've ever taken and did it pay off? My biggest risk was after I graduated from college. I quit my job and applied to the most elite grad school programs in the country for creative writing. That was a big risk. It was a gamble, and it did not pay off at all. I didn't get accepted into a single one. I couldn't get another job for a year, and I then spent the next 5 to 6 years scrounging up work where I could, working in kitchens, washing dishes, getting temp jobs.
Scanning documents.
Yeah. Not being able to support myself for a very long time. And then eventually winding up at HRP in the job I'm in now. So in a sense, it did pay off because it got me to where I am today, which is a position that I am grateful to be in. But it sucked. It was hell.
I have two. My first is job related. And that was when I got out of college, by the time I graduated, I graduated a semester early, so it was kind of in the middle. Like, it wasn't when people were hiring really, because it was before like the big rush out of college for like my class kind of thing. And so it was January-ish. And by the time I graduated, I had probably applied to like over 100 places. And, you know, a couple of interviews here and there. Nothing really would pan out. Like, it was just kind of, you know, yeah, we'll get back to you. And then you don't hear anything. And then finally, I decided to take, my sister knew one of her friends from college worked for a architecture firm in Enfield, and they were looking for an intern. And I was like, an intern? Like, I don't want an internship. Like, I literally just graduated. Like, I'm not, like, that is not what I'm looking for, kind of thing. And I was like, well, you know what? I can't find anything, so I'll just do it. I'll get some experience. It'll be better than me sitting here and then in 6 months being like, I didn't find anything. I should have taken that internship. So I took that, learned a lot. It was really great. And then they couldn't keep me on. So at the end of it, and I think it's September, that ended. And then my boss, she was like, okay, well, I know a couple people. I'm going to try to reach out, you know, this is actually she was talking through SMPS. She was like, I know some people that are hiring, so I'll see if, you know, they need someone. And that's actually how Alicia heard about me. And then I applied for my job at marketing assistant I guess for my then job, marketing assistant at HRP. And now I'm here. I'd say that paid off for sure.
Mine's going to sound really weird, but my biggest risk was deciding to drop out of college. Yeah, because I did have a accounting job, not very good accounting job, you know, more of like an accounting assistant, a lot of grunt work and stuff. But decided to drop out of school and just continue working. And I think that risk paid off. I mean, I was able to take that position, move it up to another position, you know, just steadily going up a ladder to eventually deciding to move to HRP because the, you know, track to CFO is a lot easier than at Fuss & O'Neill. So, yeah, dropping out of school was probably my biggest risk.
Nice. It is a big risk, and it
certainly
paid off. Yeah.
Now that I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, man, that could have been ugly.
I have the other one I had was related to moving here. When was that? 2.5 years ago, I think.
Wow, it's already been 2.5 years?
Well, this was when we decided we were going to move.
Oh.
Me and my wife basically, you know, she had family down here, niece and nephew and all that, and she really wanted to be closer to them. And I mean, she went to school in Connecticut, but like her life wasn't really there. Like she didn't have any high school friends or anything like that. And I had never left Connecticut or the Northeast. Like I've been here forever. I went to school there. My parents still live there, and it was like, I don't know. That's a big move for not living anywhere else, kind of thing. And on top of that, I was like, well, now I got to find a new job. Like, it's just like so much to deal with, especially because like I like working at HRP. Like, I don't want to, jeopardize that. Yeah. It was definitely scary to, look around. And on top of that, trying to find a job in a place where you don't live is near impossible.
No kidding.
Especially if you're, semi-entry level employee somewhere with a couple years of experience. It's like, why would anyone want to take a gamble on you kind of thing.
I mean, and the thing is too, with this HRP anyways, I mean, as long as you don't have to have excessive travel, which you don't, the moving of the position is pretty easy to go wherever.
Yeah, no, I was really thankful that, that worked out that way. And I was able to, transfer that over. I mean, I think it worked really well too, because at the end of, my time in Connecticut, I kind of phased out of the office. That way it wasn't like I was like in the office on this day and then never in the office again on the next day. So I kind of got used to, being away and working through the, the kinks and stuff of being somewhere else. But yeah, luckily, got incredible flexibility being an HRP. So I think that paid off as well, because I really like just seeing the sun every day, not seeing gray Connecticut. No offense to you guys.
Hey, I'll take my weather over yours right now.
Me, no kidding.
It's actually nice out today though, so.
Not here.
That's definitely only two that I can think of right now. I'm not a big risk taker, so.
Me either. I've lived an extremely cautious and safe life with pretty much everything I've ever done, backed up by a pretty big support network. I'm really not taking any chances when I actually do take chances.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, I've always especially when it's come to, I feel like my biggest decision before, my work career life was picking where you're going to go to college, right? I mean, that's a big deal. And I was like, I'll go here because, I went to Quinnipiac, for those listening, which is in Hamden, Connecticut. And I lived in Glastonbury, Connecticut at the time, probably 30 minutes away. The majority of people that go to Quinnipiac are not from Connecticut. It's 70% out of state. So it actually felt like I wasn't in Connecticut, even though I was. So it was kind of best of both worlds. So even that, right, is the safest pick ever. You're 30 minutes from home. You get the feel of not being at home, but you're still in your comfortable bubble of knowing the things around you kind of thing. Yeah, I've never been, I applied to so many schools. I was going to go to school in Chicago. I was going to go to school all these other places. And I was just when it came down to it, I was like, I can't do it. I can't make that leap. But yeah, no, I agree. Definitely big support network. Yeah, that definitely, I agree with that for sure.
Since we are going to talk about Justice League now, the superhero movie, The Justice League, came out. People didn't like it. They found out that the directors got switched, so now we're going to watch a version of the movie as filmed, directed, and edited by the original director. I wanted to invite you all to participate in the Snyder Cut Challenge, which is to watch the entirety of the Snyder Cut without taking a break and without getting on your phone. So basically the challenge is to just watch the movie. If you can manage to watch the movie, you will have successfully completed it. My main point is that I don't think you can both like this movie and also have the attention span to watch it uninterrupted.
Highly disagree. I think we're both going to love this movie.
And these two are hyped on it. I think it's going to be boring. Boring.
Oh, Tom.
And dumb.
Disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I enjoyed what he's done so far, so I'm excited to see how different it is. Mainly because it is, to its, most basic point, it is the same idea as the first movie, right? Like, I mean, you have the same people, you have the same villain kind of thing. Supposedly, it's 3.5 hours that have never been seen before. 3.5 hours out of a 4-hour movie. So
I was like, I was good not seeing any hours of it.
I mean, now you're going to get a better story of Cyborg, totally different storylines with people they didn't do anything with in the original movie.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see, I mean, what happens with it.
Tom
and
looks
where
totally
it goes.
uninterested.
Well, they were saying, it's during the last, like, they basically every year they have those big conventions, right, where they talk about the new movies coming out, the new shows, all that stuff.
Comic-Con.
And they were like, HBO was like, it was crazy because at one of these, the biggest conventions in the world in terms of comic book stuff, the most talked about thing was a movie that wasn't being created, and it was this movie because it hadn't been greenlit yet. You know what I mean? Like,
I
if people
disagree.
just,
I disagree.
but I'm just reading. That's from an article.
There's
that I
more
read, so.
new footage. Like, the total length of new footage is longer by far than most feature-length films. So it is a new movie. It's a remake, reboot.
It basically is a reboot.
It's a different movie. It took longer to cut, to edit, supposedly, than it would to produce an entire new movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard though because it is a new movie, as in it'll be the end product. You'll be like, oh wow, that ended a lot differently, or that had a lot. Then it means a lot. It doesn't mean a lot. It means at the end of the movie, you'll be like, the difference in terms of like where everything ends up between all the characters is gonna be completely different than how it ended in the original version. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Also, I didn't hear any of the new stuff that they filmed was that much new stuff. I thought it was a lot of it was already done.
They just had to. It was all CGI.
Jared Leto's stuff is a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, but
that's
it
new
was
stuff.
it's footage we haven't seen that wasn't part of a movie.
Yes. Okay.
So to me,
then
that's the equivalent
That's
of
new
of
footage.
new footage. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the footage that was shot by Zack Snyder was
heavily. Yeah. Like I heard it was something like that. Only 15 of the minutes of that Snyder stuff, the pre-stuff, was even in Joss Whedon's film.
Yeah.
So who here thinks they could complete the Snyder Cut challenge?
I think I could do it. Unfortunately, I doubt it'll happen because I live in a house of 2 teenage girls who hate each other and a son who will watch the movie with me, but will obviously be distracted by stuff.
I think I could do it. I got the green light from my wife that I can watch it without her first, then watch it with her when she's not working. So,
But you are accepting the challenge of watching it, no breaks, no phone?
I'm accepting, but knowing that I will probably
no phone is hard.
If it's a movie that you like,
yeah, but
you should be able to watch it
if you
start
went to
to
a
finish
movie
with no
theater,
phone.
if you went to a movie theater, you'd be able to do it no problem because you can't.
That's true. Yeah, I think I could do it.
The problem is I could do it. The thing is there's going to be distractions. I just know that it'll happen, and I will fail at it.
No, I'm excited for it. I'm after Wonder Woman, I'm excited to watch a movie that I think will be better than that.
Agreed.
I enjoyed Wonder Woman.
Just left a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, same.
I know
It just-
expectations.
The biggest problem with that movie is that they just needed to release it when they had it in the first place. Keeping it for that long just built it up way too much, and it was never gonna exceed expectations.
I mean, my problem with the story seems forced.
We just got through talking about Justice League.
Tom, that's not forced. We're talking about something that
It's completely different superheroes slammed into the same story with tonally those superheroes. That's the real problem with these movies is that Marvel superheroes, it's the same tone for everything. It makes sense that they're together. Superman and Batman do not make sense together. They don't belong in the same story.
Yeah, but they do a good job with them in the animated series with those guys.
I think you're just more forgiving of it because it's a cartoon. Also, I've seen some of those things, and I don't like the way Batman comes off in those.
Well, I love Batman in the animated series. Hey, by the way, this is a side question. How many episodes of WandaVision are there?
I think there's two. I think there's 2 more after this one.
So 9 total?
I believe so. Tom, I feel like you would actually really like this show, even though you said it was so dumb.
I said
the writing was predictable.
But I think but you were like, I'm canceling Disney Plus because I don't even want anything to do with it.
I'm canceling Disney Plus because I don't want to pay for another service, and it's one that I don't watch.
What are you? Did you cancel yet?
Yeah, I absolutely canceled. I finished The Mandalorian, then I canceled it. I can cancel every subscription service because the only thing I watch anymore are just the YouTube uncensored versions of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares.
Oh, I love
nothing but that. Every night I watch 4 to 5 hours of
oh my
show.
God.
Dude, I love Gordon Ramsay.
But that's the perfect example of garbage
I'm writing
television.
that down because I'm doing that.
Yeah, that is just there.
It's uncensored?
Yes, you can find them on uncensored versions on YouTube.
Oh, I am writing it down.
The point of something like that is to erase your existence from your own consciousness. It's to forget that you're a real person and because it's literally every episode is the exact same thing.
Can we put this on the podcast?
Yeah, it's going on the podcast.
Holy moly.
You're just there to completely blank out your mind. And that's what it's so good at. That's why I watch it, because it's just noise.
That's like all of HGTV.
Oh my God, totally.
When you don't want to face reality, immersed in how horrible it is to just you put something on nightmares.
All right, this cannot go in the podcast.
Definitely not going.
This is
maybe I'll just put in a long beep noise, and then I'll cut to Everett saying, "This cannot go on the podcast."
That's really good.
Perfect.
You should do that. Oh, that's funny.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. 312 is a production of HRP Associates, produced, recorded, and edited by me, Tom Simmons, with technical assistance from Everett Anderson. If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars on Apple. Check out our YouTube channel as well, or reach out to us through hrpassociates.com to learn more about any of the services we talked about today. Stay safe, everyone. We'll see you next time.